Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. Yom Chamishi Parshas Emor Shnas Tov Shinayim Vov Yeshiva Tiferes Avigdor. A challenge that most people deal with throughout their lives is a challenge of dikaon. You know what that means, David? Dikaon?
No.
You know Hebrew?
Huh?
I thought you know Hebrew. Baruch Hashem, that word you don't know. Dikaon means getting depressed. A person in his life has times when he's riding high, times when he's riding low, times of aliyah, times of yerida. People have Yemei Ava and Yemei Asina. And you go in any group, you meet somebody, you meet people, and this is what they are. They're either up or they're down. How's it going? You ask people, how's it going? Okay, it could be better. Okay. Shalom Aleichem, Reb Avram Dikayon. The guy's going through the downer now. You know, there are people who have, serious challenges with depression, but ups and downs, emotional ups and downs, are part and parcel of a person's life. And if a person doesn't know how to recognize them and how to deal with them, so it becomes a miserable time when you're in that matziv. And if you know how to perceive it properly and deal with it properly, so you know how to, a lot of times the dikaon, the depression that people have, is because they feel they're not accomplishing what they could accomplish. Sometimes, many times, it comes from them having become awash in chet, and that creates a very depressing blanket over oneself. Sometimes a person had an expectation and the expectation wasn't realized. Whatever it is. But the Shemi Shmuel, that's the son of the Avnei Nezer, in Parshas Tzav, on Chol HaMoed Pesach, he has a very interesting lesson from this week's Parsha, which I would like to share with you. Take a look in the Pasuk, it says, V'heinif es ha'omer reishis kitzircham l'fnei Hashem. V'heinif es ha'omer. Should lift up, wave the omer l'fnei Hashem lir tzoinchem. Rashi says, if you will bring the carbon omer in this fashion, as the Torah sets forth, yeh l'rotzain lachem, it will be l'rotzain for you. Hashem will favor this. Mimachras hashabos yinifenu akoyim. From the day after the first day of Pesach, That's the day when you are makriv the oimer. That's when you make the tenufa. Usfartem lochem. You should count for yourself mimochras haShabbos, on the day after the first day of Pesach. Miyoim haviachem es ha'omer ha'tenufa. From the day you bring the oimer ha'tenufa, you count Sheva Shabbosos Temimos. You count 7 complete weeks. And then you bring another carbon. In addition to the carbon Omer, V'hikravtem Mincha Chadosha LaHashem. You bring a Mincha Chadosha LaHashem. Rashi says, what is the meaning of Mincha Chadosha? Here HaMincha HaChadosh. This is the new offering, the new carbon. Shehuva, that is brought min hechodash, from the new tevuah that took root in the new year. It's a mincha chadosha, not from the old tevuah. And if Rashi says, if you say l'chayr, what do you need this for? You already brought the minchas ha'omer. I already brought a minchas ha'omer. The minchas ha'omer was a offering from the new tevuah, and that was matir all the old tevuah. So why do you need a second carbon to be brought on Shavuos? Why do you have to bring the mincha chadosha on Shavuos? The imtaimer zakrashi are karva minchas ha'omer. You already brought the minchas ha'omer. What do you need more? What more do you need? So he says, this is Eino Kishar Menachos. The Minchas HaOmer is different. It's not like the other Menachos. In what way? Shehiba min ha'sa'orim. It comes from barley. Uminchas habikurim ba milechem chitim chametz. And the Minchas habikurim comes from lechem chitim chametz. Lechem chitim is the higher carbon. Carbon omer is the lower carbon. It's brought from sa'irim, which is a meichel behema. Lechem chitim and chametz, that's the meichel, that's the food of a adam ma'ula, of a person who's classy person. It's not lechem oini. Sa'irim, on the other hand, is a meichel behema. Mora says it's even damaging to Adam to eat sa'irim. Now there are those people who are mesimim atzmam kibehema, the Gemara says. Rashi says they are dakei ruach. They are people who are lowly of spirit. So he explains that there are tkufos in a person where his matzav ruach is down. He feels himself in a lower madrega. So what do you do to deal with that? He says the Torah tells us Mimacharas HaShabbos. Mimacharas HaShabbos means the day after you went out of Mitzrayim. Remember that you're acharei Yetzias Mitzrayim. You have to know that history, the Torah's history, are guideposts and mile markers and signs for us how to deal with our life. What does Yetzias Mitzrayim teach us? That even if a person once met a fellow who was very down, he had done some bad things, and he thought he was like toast. That was his words. He said, I'm toast. And I've gone too far, he tells me. And I said, really? What shar are you holding by? I don't know. I said, you're wrong. He says, I knew you would say that. I said, obviously, that's why you came here. I said, if you really thought you were toasted, you wouldn't. You wanted to know if I would agree to you if that you're toast, or you wanted to know if there's hope. What's the hope? I said, you mention every single day a number of times, Anoichi Hashem Elikecha Hamalcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem who elevated you out of Mitzrayim. You have to know, Yitzias Mitzrayim teaches us that if a person is in the depths, a person's in the pits, and he doesn't see any hope, represents a lot of depths and a lot of pits and a lot of walls. And he thinks, how am I going to get out of here? It's impossible. Will I ever move past this? You have to know you should not lose hope. You will be saved in a most amazing way. Because Klal Yisroel was Shakua in Memteh Shari Tumah. And they knew that it was Nigzer upon them 400 years of Shibud. And they still had 190 years left. There was no hope that they were able to make it to the end. From a ruchnistic aspect, from a gashmistic aspect. But you know what? They didn't lose hope, and they didn't give up, and they never threw the towel in, totally. How do you know? Because till the end, had they thrown the towel in, they would have changed their language, they would have changed their names. They kept their names, Jewish names, they kept their Lashon, and you know what? They were saved. Now there were those people who gave up hope, and they lost their will, as Rashi says. They didn't want to get out of Mitzrayim. It was a sizable amount of people. Loirotz, they didn't want to get out. And what happened to those people? They stayed in Mitzrayim. They went down to the annals of history as people who are never was zeichet to become part of the Am Yisroel, the Am HaNivchar, and the Am Mekablei HaTorah. But those who weren't Meshanim de Lavush, those who didn't give up their hope, they were the ones who were zeicha to go on Kegen the Geula and to see the light. So the pasuk says, "Mimachras haShabbos yinifenu hakoyim." You have to know the lesson. Take the lesson of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and you have to know that even from such a matzav, it's possible for you to be tenufa, for you to be lifted up, for you to be elevated. So if so, the whole idea the Torah tells us is, from after you got out of Mitzrayim, I want you to now start counting after the dark days of Mitzrayim. And then you were lifted up and elevated. The Torah says, begin to count down toward Kabbalah Satayr. And if you do that, then on the 50th day, we will bring Lechem Chametz, which is the symbol of we made it. We're not anymore Tzibrochen Aniyim, Oichle Matzah, now we're Oichle Chametz, we're Anshe Maila. A person has to know that the secret of success is to live with a future. There is, in the Gemara we find two things. When bad things happen to good people. That's part of life. The Gemara has two members. There's one member that says, Gam zu l'toiva. That means that even though we don't understand, this is also for the best. And then there's another member in the Gemara that says, Kol ma da avid rachmana l'tav avid. Whatever Hashem does to you that looks bad, He's really preparing you for taif. You have to know that every raw that you experience is either a gateway l'toiva, if you understand the mechanics of Hashem is preparing you for a tenufa. The worst Yitzhak, the worst Mitzrayim, Hashem was preparing us for an aliyah gedola. You have to live with a future. That's what a person has to understand. No matter what, no matter where, HaKadosh Baruch was always doing this otayv. If you can understand that, you can be a very greisa mutzlach. What happens to most people is they get into a bad matzah, and it doesn't pass quickly enough for them, and they themselves prolong it, and they themselves are the cause for their own failure, because instead of moving toward Hashem and saying, I understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're preparing me for a wonderful opportunity which I can't imagine. In spite of that, know what the person does? He says he gets down and he gets depressed. That's the pasuk. The pasuk says when a person is in a bad place, Cherdas Adam Yitein Moikesh. Know what that means? That means when you are in a bad situation and you're overwhelmed and you're afraid and you lose hope, you know what happens? Yitein Moikesh. HaKadosh Baruch, that you yourself place obstacles in front of yourself that weren't even there beforehand. You create for yourself new obstacles. Ubayteach b'Hashem. Someone who's bayteach in Hashem is Yisugav. He's going to be elevated above those obstacles that exist. Which is an unbelievable zach a person has to know. When Onkelos wanted to be Miskayer, so he went to his uncle, the Caesar, and he asked the Caesar, what shall I do? Give me some advice. So he said, acquire schira that now is cheap, that is not sought after. That's why it's cheap. You know why? The time will come when it's going to be needed, and then it's going to go up in price. So what did he do? He decided to become Jewish. He said, I see the Jews are now being oppressed. The Jews are not valued as they were. They were once a very valuable commodity. No? So he said, I'm sure there's going to be a future over here. And the future will be very shining future. That's what he chose in his life. So everybody, the next time you get into a down matziv, you have to understand, you know, if you ever went, I'm not saying you should go, but if you ever went rafting, white water rafting, and you get into a, store starts off, the first little bit of the trip is very smooth water when you kick off on the raft, and all of a sudden you start to see the water and the rocks, the rapids start to kick up in the thing. You say, oh, everybody in the boat does that. Everybody gets ready for the thing. You don't get depressed. You know you're going to get past this. It's going to be an accomplishment, and you're going to come out. It's going to be smoother, and you get to the next one. I remember going one of those things, thinking afterwards, boy, that's mamish the lesson of life. Right in the beginning, it starts off calm, and then all of a sudden it turns up. But if you know how to take it well, and you enjoy it, it's fun. It's fun. Hopefully you don't break a leg in the way, you don't drown in the process. But if a person stays on board, and a person stays focused, you have to know you ride the wave. That's what you do. Person has to know that this is the most important thing for you to live with a future. Means you have to constantly tell yourself, no matter how bleak it looks, we're going to get out. Just like Hashem put us through Mitzrayim, and we didn't say how we're going to get out. We didn't say how we're going to get out. We got out, and we got out in the most beautiful, wondrous, miraculous manner. Those people who wanted to get out. If you wanted to get out, means you lived with a future. You have to live with the future. That's the key to the success. Here's a person who's looking for a shidduch. Everybody looks for a shidduch at some point. Whether you're a zachar, whether you're an nekeva, you look for a shidduch. To most people, it doesn't come carte blanche. But you know what? A lot of people mess themselves up. You know why? Because they have cherdas adam. They're afraid. And they start to think, who's going to marry me? I'm not a yachsin. I've done bad things in my life. I'm not a famous tzaddik. My parents aren't that rich. Why am I going to get a shidduch? And they don't realize, they get depressed. I can walk around, every time I go to a lake, when I meet someone, I meet an older bacher, Shalom Aleichem, I see the guy's not smiling, you know he's not married. The guy's depressed. Oh, when's Mosai Yavai? When's the Gula going to come? That's the guy thinks. When's the Gula going to come? He ever felt that he gets married? It's also a very common thing. People get married, they don't have children right away. Oh boy, this is much more. This is a nightmare. And know what happens? People have no future. And when a person has no future, but if a person has a future, so I'm not saying you don't have to learn patience. You definitely have to have patience. Patience you have to have. You have to tell yourself, there's going to be a future. Most people, Ruba de Ruba, get married. I don't know, I've heard about this crisis, but Baruch Hashem, I don't know many people who are 40 years old and not married. The way they make it sound, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them. If yes, that's a terrible tragedy. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send them all, they write Zivug b'Mehirim. But the people that I know, and the people that you know, eventually get married. Of course, you get a girl that's 23, 24, a bocha 27, 28. He thinks definitely it's the curtain call. The guy is convinced it ain't happening. And it gets 29. Spoke to a girl 29 a few years ago. Now her mother called me again. Now she's 33. I said, she's still looking for a shidduch. I said, your daughter had one problem. She said, what was that? She's too normal. I told the girl, I'm very disappointed. I can't write you a shidduch. You're way too normal for me. You're too normal. The people that I know are a little off. That's all. You're a regular, wonderful, normal girl. At 29, it's not easy to find normal guys who are not married. Kodesh Baruch Hu send her a shidduch, hopefully shortly. But a person has to know, if you live with a future, that is your success. And if you don't live with a future, that is your downfall. That's what a person has to know. Nope. A fella has to know that this is a story where Rabbi Yankel Galinsky was in Lithuania when it was conquered by the communists. Most of the people lived in rented diras, houses. And he says, I remember the ultimate dira was to get a dira that had a back door. Because they were under the impression that if they came knocking on you, the communists came looking for you in the front door, you could run out the back door. After a while, they discovered that it wasn't such a good idea, because the communists always, whenever they knocked on the front door, there were always people waiting by the back door to grab you. So it didn't work out so much. But one time, I found myself living in a house with a shaykhit and a moil. And he had a back door. No. To say that he found an escape place, that's not exact. Because this guy was being sought after more than Yankel Galinsky was being sought after. This guy was a wanted guy, a sheikhet, Navoil. No, one night, we heard the knocks on the door. All of a sudden, some serious knocking on the door. I turned to the fellow and I said, Reb Isaac, get up and stand by the back door. I'm going to go to the front door and see who they're looking for. If they're looking for you, you hightail out the back door. No, I opened the door. He said, and the worst fears were confirmed. Standing there in front of me was a officer from the NKVD. That's the secret police of the Russians. No. Turns to me and he says, does the sheikhet live here? So I said, sheikhet? No. Kosher SHLITA is forbidden in Russia. We know that. No, we know no SHLITA here. So the guy said, does the guy who cuts the kids live here? Does the guy who cuts the kids live here? What an interesting way of touching up a mile. No, I said, oh no, that's also a big sin. No. The guy looked at me and he said, Dreit nicht im Kopf. In Yiddish, he changed from Russian on the spot. He said, Dreit nicht im Kopf. Where is he? All of a sudden, I saw this guy with a Yidl. No, if you hear Mama Loshen, you already become a little softer. I called out, Isaac, could you come? And Isaac came, comes to the front door, and he's white like a sheet, and he looks at this guy from the NKVD, and the guy tells him, closes the door behind him, and he says, let me get to the point. I heard you make children into Jews. Another tight chop of a mile. A number of weeks ago, I had a child born to me. And my wife has been having a dream lately, a repetitive dream, that her father is pushing her to make her kid a Jew. So what's going to do with me, he says. You be tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning, come to Rechoiv, Barzani, number 5. If you see a woman walking out of the house carrying a basket, that's a siman that the coast is clear. You enter that house. There's only going to be a girl who works there, so a lady who works there, and she's okay. You can go ahead and cut the kid and do the job. And then he turned to me, you say, you little guy, Yankel Galinsky, you say, you help him out. That was my first son to Kayus, he said. So he went. The next morning, the sheikhet didn't go to work. Now that itself was very dangerous, not going to work. Because if he gets fired, he'll be starving in those days. So he decided, no, if we're going already, he said, let's go to B'Tayvel before the bris. Now this was the middle of the winter. So we had to walk 5 kilometers in the snow until we reached a river. Then the sheikhet took an axe and he started to chop a hole in the river, in the ice. And he went in and he told me, no, he said, I got in after him. He said, I came out drowned because I couldn't find the opening. Once I went down, I was so freezing, I couldn't find, that was a polar bear. I couldn't get out of this thing. No, it was azak cold, I can't explain it to you. Now we walk back 5 kilometers to the city. You understand? We come out, how to get up in the morning. And we didn't have any clocks, no watches. We arrived, it was still early. So we went, in Russia, he said, in those days, you couldn't stand around doing nothing. If you were standing around, you were a parasite, you were a criminal, or you do nothing. So he had to do something. So what did he do? He went to the local post office. And the local post, there was a big watch, a big clock there, and there was another thing. It had a long line, and it had a couple of lines. So they got on the longest line. Figure, keep busy. Go to the post office. No. Kitzer, it got closer, we saw it's our turn. So he went to the next line when there was more people waiting. We kept on till we get time, because we were close to the place. And when he got find the time, we went to the Rechav Barzani, and we saw a lady walking out with a basket. The house was empty, and we went in. The lady showed us where the child was, and there was a paper on the crib, and the paper had a name, a Jewish name, written out in Russian letters. No, the Moel did the Mila, and he did the brachas. I was the Sandik, and I was the Oimer ala brachas. Then after we finished, the servant appeared, and she said, "Is everything all right?" I said, "Yes." He said, "The Balabaya said you shouldn't leave yet. I was told to tell you you shouldn't walk out right away." What now? She brought to the table a loaf of bread. She said it was a loaf of bread that he hadn't seen such a large loaf. It was a 6-pound loaf of bread. You ever see the Hungers, those 2-pounders? It was a 6-pound. It was a bris challah k'moishe kosef t'ayra for 2 yidlach. And she took out a pan, and the man said to tell you, this is brand new. She broke into this pan 12 eggs. 12 eggs she made. I counted. He said, and she said, "You light the fire." What you call it? The uncle lit the fire, and she made scrambled eggs for them. I said to the sheikh, "No, this is Sudas mitzvah. I'm Sudas mitzvah." No. Then she said, "No, eat." So he ate. And he ate, he said, l'soiva, and it was very good. And it was the first time I'd eaten such a meal in many, many weeks. I ate it up till the bottom, to the last drop. We benched, and now we're ready to go out. And the lady appeared again, and she said, no. The Balabaya said, you should take this. You can't believe what you gave us. He gave us a sack. He gave us a sack, and in the sack there was breads, 36 kilograms. A kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So how much is that? 70? About 80 pounds almost. Unbelievable. Look at 80 pounds of bread. It was like gold. Gold mamish. No. The uncle said, I don't know who weighed more, me or the ones from gold, or he used to make a joke whenever he came to the yeshiva, I remember. People used to ask him, what are you? He said, I'm a kilometer. He was a kilometer big. Kilometer? And he was extremely short, like 4 feet something. He used to say, yeah. He said, I weigh a kilo and I'm tall 1 meter. Kilometer. Meter is 3 feet. So I tried to lift the sack up, and then I chap, Shrek, I can't take the sack. He said, I'll go in the street. A policeman will stop me. He's telling me to open up the thing. He's going to see what I have here, gold. He's going to say, where'd you get this from? I'll tell him, Vase wants to design over here. Well, we'll be in prison next day, all of us. So I said, no. So she turned, I told her why. She turned white, and she said, Oh, you're right. We can't have any suspicion of a connection between Jews and this NKVD secret police officer. And what kind of kesher? Risk kesher. Kitzer, I said, I'll tell you what you have. You probably have in the house coupons to go shopping in the government stores. In those days, the regular people had to buy in regular stores, and you would stand for hours and hours online. Listen, I mean literally, you stood in hours to get bread, to get a milk. It was gefährlich. I had kids here in Russia from yeshiva who explained to me what it was like. They used to go 6 o'clock in the morning and wait for hours, mamish, to get something. We had another bacher here whose mother was the vice mayor in Moscow. He told me he didn't wait in any lines. He had a special store to go, special coupons. So Bianca asked these people to give him those coupons, and they got discounts in these places. And she did it very happily, and she gave us a whole book of coupons. We had the coupons for a very long time after this. 5 weeks goes past. I'm going in the street one day, and one day, right in front of me, I see this officer. And I turned to him, and I said, "Can I maybe ask you a question?" He said, he turned white. He looked at me, and his eyes became wide. He recognized me. And he said to me, "Hurry, what do you want?" And I told him, "Look how shocked you are. Look how scared you are. It's nicker on your partner. Why'd you endanger yourself with this? Do you have any idea what can happen to you if this gets out? Why did you do this? Why did you put yourself in such danger?" The guy said like this. "See now," he said, "our nation has been in existence for 3,000 years. No, true. Now we're going through a difficult period. But it's like a cloudy day. Cloudy days never stay forever. Eventually, the clouds dissipate and the sun shines. It's a pride to be a Jew. I think it's the greatest pride to be a Jew. And I want my son to know to what nation he belongs." That's called living with a future. That's called in the darkest period. You know, your hope is never shot. You never give up hope. You know, eventually the sun will shine. Every Ben Torah goes through periods of his life where he has difficulties in his life, challenges, things that he's unhappy about. But you have to know that cloudy days. And if you weather the cloudy days, that will help you be zeicha to the sunshine. That will be zeicha to the mincha chadosha. That will help you minimize your time. You have to live with hope. Had a chaver, Talmud, who went to prison. And you can't imagine the feelings and emotions you experience before you go to prison. Your life is about to be over, as you know it. And you're going into a new world, a new existence. Pasha de Zachen that we took for granted, going to the bathroom when you want and how you want, eating, walking around, sleeping, everything is mamish. You controlled and you become a number. From a human being, you become a number. And I told the fellow that when you daven every day, ponder when it says matir asurim. When I say matir asurim, I think about him and somebody else, and others that I don't know. Matir asurim is Hashem is a matir asurim. Even people who got themselves in jail, well, Hashem felt it necessary to put him in jail. But Hashem is a matir asur. I said, focus on the matir. Number one, don't believe what they tell you, how long your sentence is. That's just part of the challenge. Tell yourself, even if it's 5 years, even if it's 8 years, years come to an end. And I said, remember, we were given a straight sentence. The entire Am Yisroel was sentenced to prison for 400 years. And Hashem took us out 190 years early. Always focus on that. Don't focus on what you had and now you don't have. Focus on your future, what you could have and what you will have. And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim, and He's going to take you out of Mitzrayim. And in Mitzvah Hashem, I told him, commit to learning. He started to learning. He made chavrusas over there. I told him, finish Masechtas. I told him something you would have never done outside of the prison walls. Don't focus on the negative. You just focus on the positive. And now, in less than a month, hopefully 2 days before Shavuos, is getting out. It's early. He's getting out early, Baruch Hashem. And hopefully he'll be able to begin his life and continue life. And I spoke to him on the phone a few months ago, and I asked him, how is your matzav ruach? So my matzav ruach is good. I'm thinking about the future. If you live with a future and you think about a future, that's your hope to exist in this world.